Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT11, and BT11 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck we're going to take a look at today is going to be the deck that I did take to the Digimon 2022 Nationals, and that's going to be a new iteration on the BlackWarGreymon deck. So BlackWarGreymon X Antibody is looking to be the big boogeyman deck of the format just because of how powerful he is, not only having access to really good offensive tools, but defensive tools as well, so that way you could try to counter the expected meta depending on the ratios that you're going to be putting into the deck, on top of having some really good X Antibody based synergy cards and Greymon based synergy cards to play around with as well, to kind of customize it even further from there. But let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Koromon. So this is the BT9 version of Koromon, and I didn't necessarily find the draw power off of the BT5 Koromon to be super useful because I wanted to see some sort of DP boost, so that way I can ensure that my Digimon is going to be stronger than the opponent's Digimon, and this was just the best egg to accomplish that. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the BT5 version of Agumon, and this is going to be one of the deck's digging or searching tools to help with its overall consistency, looking for our Greymon and Omnimon based cards. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon X Antibody. So Agumon X Antibody is another digging/searching tool that we could utilize in various different ways. If we needed to, we could cycle him on top of an Agumon, and on top of that, he has an on-play and when digivolving ability to help us try to dig out our Omnimons or Greymons. And on top of that, we could also try to dig out our X Antibody option card as well. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the first starter deck version of Agumon, and this is in the deck just to try to help DP boost our Digimon, so that way our Digimon can be stronger than the opponents. If you wanted to, you could think about running the promo that's boosting your Greymons by 2,000. I just found that the DP boost amount didn't necessarily matter as long as we were DP boosting our Digimon. That's what really mattered. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Agumon. So this is the BT8 version of Agumon, and this is a pretty good searching or digging tool to, again, help with the overall consistency of the deck, looking for our Greymons and Dragonkins. Then I also do like having the 13th rookie, especially in this style of deck, just because I want to try to see a rookie at the start of the game as often as I possibly can to reduce the amount of times that I would end up bricking. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Greymon. So this is the BT5 version of Greymon, and his inheritable ability is doing something we've already seen and want to do, which is DP boost our Digimon, ensuring that ours are going to be stronger than the opponents. Then, on top of that, he's actually a pretty decent card at helping us win the game of chicken, just because his native ability allows us to try to gain a memory back for digivolving into him, as long as the Digimon is an Agumon or has Agumon in its Digivolution source. So that way we could hide our main stack in raising, have it be ready and waiting to punish the opponent when they move their main stack out of their raising area, and the tempo and speed of this card just allows us to be able to build up a secondary Digimon on the field a little bit quicker than the opponent might be anticipating. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon. So this is the BT8 version of Greymon, and this Greymon we're utilizing just to add some extra defensive lines of play into the deck, because he's going to allow a higher stage Digimon to have access at the blocker ability. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the brand new Greymon X Antibody. So the brand new Greymon X Antibody is an absolutely insane card at how powerful he is at everything that he's providing for the deck. So he is a little bit less efficient to digivolve up into as just a base level 4, but ideally we're trying to digivolve him for 0 on top of a Greymon, adding some extra cycling and being able to utilize our Greymon's inheritable abilities with this card if we need to in a pinch. Then on top of that, he's allowing us to digivolve into our level 5s, cheaper than what the opponent might normally want us to do, just because it's reducing the cost by 1 for each color our Greymon is. So if at worst it's only 1 color, color, then it's reducing the cost by 1, but if it's 2 colors, then it's reducing the cost by 2, allowing us to easily go up into our level 5s, and then from there we could easily go up into our level 6 to punish the opponent. Then the protections that this card is adding as its inheritable ability is all of the same protections that the old Greymon X Antibody was working with, where the Digimon can't be bounced, deleted, or put to the bottom of the deck. But the difference is we get to use the X Antibody option to pay the price to keep our Digimon around, which means that we could reapply this over and over again as long as we see X Antibody option cards. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running one copy of MetalGreymon Alterous mode. So this is the promo Alterous mode, but this is a pretty decent card because he is also counted as a MetalGreymon, and he could Digivolve for 0 on top of another MetalGreymon. Then he has some built-in removal attached to him when we Digivolve up into him, which is pretty decent at being able to clear some extra bodies on the field if the opponent is trying to swarm. But what we're really looking to gain out of the card is his inheritable ability that's basically acting like the old Greymon X Antibody, allowing us to utilize Digimon of the same level to be able to keep our Digimon around from being bounced, tucked, or deleted. So it's just added protection into the deck on top of potential added cycling. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of MetalGreymon. So this is the BT8 version of MetalGreymon, and this card is absolutely insane at all of the power and pressure that it could apply onto the opponent. So just for Digivolving up into this card, we get to anti-tempo them with some de-Digivolution action, which could ruin some of their inheritable abilities and makes their Digimon weaker. Then he also gets to delete one of the opponent's weak Digimon as well for some added control and removal. Then his inheritable ability is the main draw of this card, allowing us to be able to utilize our high level Digimon, more specifically our level 6s, to be able to attack into the opponent's unsuspended Digimon for even more added control. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of MetalGreymon X Antibody. So this is the BT11 version of MetalGreymon X Antibody, and we're using him for some good passive burn in combination with our BT8 MetalGreymon, and we're also using him for some added protection when we Digivolve up into him. So just for Digivolving into him, we get to add DP reduction protection and de-Digivolution protection. So in combination with all of the protections our Alterous mode or our Greymon X Antibodies providing, we have a slew of different coverage against virtually most removal in the game at this point. Then on top of that, if we did Digivolve him on top of a MetalGreymon or the Digimon has X Antibody in its Digivolution source, then we even get some more removal on the opponent's mid to low level Digimon as well, and the inheritable ability allows us to passively burn the opponent's security whenever any Digimon becomes unsuspended during their turn. So whether it's our Digimon with Reboot or their Digimon with any ability to unsuspend, it just forces the opponent to start losing security for us basically doing nothing at all. And then on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of BlackWarGreymon. So this is the BT8 version of BlackWarGreymon, and I actually found him to be kind of underwhelming just because most of the time when I was moving my stack out of raising, I wanted to Digivolve and punish the opponent and be more proactive about it. Digivolving on attacking is a huge thing, and this card unfortunately doesn't let me do that, so it made me want to run less of this card as a result, but he's still a good card just because the added Tamer removal and control that he has still is pretty decent while acting as a base for us to use for our X-based Digimon. And speaking of our X-based Digimon, next I'm going to be running 3 copies of Gaiomon. So Gaiomon is probably the big MVP of this deck just because he's the card that wins you the mirrors more often than not, just because his when Digivolving ability not only can de-Digivolve the opponent, so if they lose the protection from de-Digivolution, then that makes their Digimon vulnerable, but even if they don't, and you can't de-Digivolve their Digimon, just having access at Blitz is still very, very powerful in combination with the BT8 MetalGreymon to allow us to attack into the opponent's unsuspended Digimon to have some extra control onto the field. Then the fact that he natively is a Greymon and he natively also has Security Attack Plus and Reboot only makes the card even better for us to want to use, while naturally having some high DP. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of BlackWarGreymon X Antibody. So BlackWarGreymon X Antibody, yes, we could use him in combination with our BlackWarGreymon. Most of the time, what I found myself doing is just swinging with my level 5 with the X Antibody option underneath, and then just digivolving right into BlackWarGreymon X Antibody to have a better access at being able to utilize the card. Then on top of that, the reboot ability is still pretty good in combination with the MetalGreymon X Antibody from BT11. So that way we could try to burn the opponent's security, and then he has a slew of really good defensive abilities during the opponent's turn to try to control and manipulate the opponent's actions. So just on base without the X Antibody option, he could redirect the Digimon with the highest DP's attack to this Digimon, suspended or not, for some even more added control, and if you pair this up with Blocker, then he could stop 2 of the opponent's attacks alone. Then his secondary ability acts as some good removal. When a Digimon becomes unsuspended, again, it could be theirs or it could be ours as long as it's during the opponent's turn, then we get to delete the opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost. If they only have 1 Digimon, then it doesn't matter, it just deletes it outright, again, forcing the opponent to really have to think critically about how they're going to be aggressing with BlackWarGreymon X Antibody on the field. And then as far as the level 7s go, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Omnimon X Antibody. So this is the BT5 version of Omnimon X Antibody, and I ran this card specifically for the Grandest matchup, just because one of BlackWarGreymon's biggest weaknesses is being attacked into, and this Omnimon shores up that weakness. So what this card is doing is it stops the opponent from being able to attack as long as we trash 2 sources off of this Digimon. They still get their when attacking abilities off, but at least it stops them from being able to interact with our Digimon even more, and allows us to try to keep our Digimon on the field to be able to then punish the opponent in kind, just because he has a nice when attacking ability to try to delete the opponent's Digimon whose DP is equal to or less than this Digimon, which most Digimon during the opponent's turn would be weaker than this Omnimon. So not only do we stop them from being able to attack into us, but we're able to attack into them and to be able to delete their Digimon in one go. And then the last Mega and last Digimon I'm going to be running in the deck is going to be 1 copy of Omnimon X Antibody. So this is the BT10 version of Omnimon X Antibody, and the BT5 version is more of the shield of the deck, where this is going to be more of the sword of the deck. So just digivolving up into him, he has some pretty decent removal, which against certain matchups could matter because it's putting their strongest Digimon to the bottom of their deck. But we're using him mostly as the win condition, especially when the opponent only has 1 card in the security, just because when we digivolve up into him or when we attack with him, then we get a return an X Antibody or level 6 from his Digivolution source to the bottom of our deck, and then we get a look at the opponent's security and then throw 1 card from their security away, so their strongest security threat or their only card in security, and then the attack will still go through. So it's just a really powerful card to try to help deal some extra damage and win you the game. Next, on to the Tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Yuuya Kuga. So Yuuya is a really fantastic tamer for this deck because he's going to be acting as the deck's dedicated memory fixer, so that way we could try to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can, on top of the fact that he's going to be adding some extra protection into the deck when we're digivolving our Greymon of the same level on top of another Greymon of the same level, which is what we're doing most of the time with a lot of our X-based Digimon. So that way, not only does our Digimon get a plus 2000 DP boost until the end of the opponent's turn, but also isn't affected by options as well, which could matter against certain matchups that have forms of removal that we don't necessarily have protections against. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Cool Boy. Cool Boy is still an absolutely insanely powerful card because of how much this card is providing for the deck, not only acting as a searching tool for our X Antibody Digimon and our X Antibody option, but also allowing us to be able to gain some memory and card draw when we're digivolving our Digimon into their X forms off of their bases. As far as the options go, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Hades Force. So Hades Force is basically the Gaia Force of the deck, especially out of security. It's trying to deal with the opponent's high-level Digimon, And then on top of that, its main ability from our hand, again, allows us to try to delete the opponent's high-level Digimon as long as we have a high-level Digimon on our field, or more commonly, what we use it for against specific matchups is to try to be able to delete a wide field of the opponent's low-level Digimon or Tamers, so that way we have good utility on what we want to try to control utilizing this card, and we still get to make an attack with our Greymon named Digimon after we utilize this option. And then the last option and last card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of X Antibody. So X Antibody is a very powerful card for how this deck wants to work, just because of its interaction not only with our X-based Digimon, but how the protection of our Greymon X Antibody wants to play in combination with this card. So out of our security, it's still going to try to anti-tempo the opponent. It allows us to play this card from our hand underneath one of our Digimon for free, and as an inheritable, it can't be trashed, so that's something important to try to help protect our stack, on top of the fact that it allows our Digimon to be able to attack and Digivolve into an X-based Digimon on that attack, which allows us to be a little bit more proactive with some of our cards. And then as far as the general game plan and gameplay of the deck goes, it is just your traditional stack building deck where we're trying to build our ideal stack to be able to move it out of raising and punish the opponent. So we kind of do need to pay attention to the game of chicken and to evaluate when we should be moving out our stack. But our ideal stack is going to involve basically any level 3. The best one is obviously the one that has the inheritable to DP boost our Digimon to make sure ours are going to be stronger. Then from here, we could go into our X and then end on a level 4. The level 4 you kind of want in raising if you have the DP boost is going to be Greymon. Otherwise, you're okay with using the normal Greymon from BT5. But from this type of position, if we have a Cool Boy set up, we're already positioned to be able to potentially punish the opponent out of raising. So that way we could move our Digimon out of raising, Digivolve into our X, tap the Cool Boy to gain a memory and draw a card, then go from our X into Metal, then from Metal into either Metal or Metal X, or none of them if we really need to, just because this transaction already allows us to be able to get into our level 5 super cheap. And then from here, to ideally punish the opponent, we're going to go into Metal X, so that way we have even more protections in this example. And then we're going to end off in Gaiomon out of raising 9 out of 10 times to be able to swing into the opponent's unsuspended Digimon at worst. So from here, when it turns to the opponent's turn, we're going to utilize Reboot, and then that's going to allow us to burn the opponent's security, and then we could start applying pressure because the security attack +1 on Gaiomon, on top of ideally having Blocker to be able to have some good offensive and defensive lines of play. So that's kind of like your ideal stack situation, but in the game, nothing's usually ideal, and most of the time when we're trying to play this game of chicken, we're usually just going to try to figure out what's the best and most efficient way to be able to build up a second stack, and that's kind of where BT5 Greymon comes in, because we could just play Agumon and then start digivolving him into our Greymon to have the ability to be able to get up into a level 4 super cheap. And then as you just saw with our initial stack, as long as we're using Greymon X Antibody, we could digivolve on top of our Greymon for free, so that way we could then be in a position to apply lots of pressure onto the opponent thanks to the speed of evolution that the Greymon X Antibody is providing. If we have one in raising as well, that's also pretty good, again, just because we could position ourselves to best try to force the opponent to be able to react to what we're doing, which is where Greymon comes in huge play, just because Greymon, with a stack built up on our field, could actually start swinging the game in your favor because he's going to pop your Tamers and make our other X forms cheaper to play. But it's sometimes pretty hard to get into that ideal type of a position, which is where Greymon starts to kind of falter, especially if you can only establish one stack out of raising. If he's your only level 6, then he's just not going to be doing a whole lot, just because most of the time we're going to end up passing the turn on him, and we need to be more proactive. So in our more ideal stack situation again. If we're utilizing all of our cards properly, then we should be able to, at worst, from this type of position, use X Antibody as the bottom inheritable source, swing with our Metal X, and then from Metal X we could Digivolve into BlackWar X to kind of get something similar to what Gaiomon is doing, where we have the ability to constantly apply pressure onto the opponent. The unsuspend on the reboot will be able to burn the opponent's security passively, so we don't always need to try to attack into their security. And then from here, we're trying to play more of like a defensive control style gameplay versus utilizing Gaiomon to punish and then be super aggressive with. And this is where our Omnimons come in handy, where if we're trying to use Gaiomon and pressure the opponent, then we could get them down to 1 security pretty easily, which is where Omnimon X from BT10 comes into play to basically act as an auto win button. And then against specifically the grandest match or matches that want and have the ability to attack into your Digimon, that's where Omnimon X Antibody comes into play. But you're going to have to be careful just because Omnimon X Antibody does cost 6 to Digivolve into, which is pretty expensive. And if you're trying to do this whole like cute Gaiomon into Omni X play, then you do have to make sure and watch your memory as closely as you possibly can to be able to utilize the cards as efficiently as you possibly can, especially against a grandest player. If you literally put them to like 10 and they can't do anything and they don't have an out to Omnimon X Antibody, then you could just win the game from that point forward. So there's just a lot of intricacies on how you could build your stack, reading and evaluating what the opponent is doing, and what tools you have access to put yourself in the best possible position that you possibly can. Then there's still just a whole bunch of different ways to customize the deck to really make it your own and run some various other tech and tools on top of playing around with some of the ratios already inside of the deck. So like I stated before, if you really wanted to run the draw egg, by all means feel free to do so. I just found the DP boost to matter more than the card draw when I'm actually utilizing my stacks. Then, as I mentioned before, you also could theoretically run the promo Agumon over the starter deck one. Then, if you wanted to, you could still think about running the old Greymon X Antibody as a good tech card, just because he's still having that same protection that we kind of want and need to be able to keep our Digimon around. And we even have the starter deck Greymon as one of the better other Greymons to run, just for some extra security tech for more damage potential. And speaking of damage potential, we also have the MetalGreymon X Antibody from BT9 as another really good one to not only just be a cheaper card to Digivolve on top of our MetalGreymons, but also have some more DP and security attack plus to put more pressure onto the opponent. Then, if you really wanted to, you could also think about running the promo BlackWarGreymon as one of the cheaper BlackWarGreymons to play, so that way you could try to be more memory efficient and make better use of this card, on top of the fact that the unsuspend actually could matter to be able to close out games a little bit faster. And then we even have BT5 Blitz Omnimon as a really good card to try to close out games, just because the unsuspend and Blitz, with the opponent having 0 security after our last attack, it could act as a good alternative win condition. Then Black has a slew of really decent tool cards that we could use to try to be able to disrupt the opponent even further. Final Zubagon Punch is a pretty good one on top of Congo, on top of Breath of the Gods. Then if we want, we could even lean a little bit more into the red removal side of things, and red has some pretty decent removal cards that we could utilize as well. And then we always could think about running some memory boosts, just because they're always generically decent cards to think about incorporating. If you're going more of a black base, you're obviously going to want to use black memory boost, but with the red base, you could use red memory boost. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.